Eden Marshall worked her land with steady hands and patience, but she never imagined what awaited her when the gang came roaring through her fields at dusk. They made it their mission to break her, tearing down fences, torching coops, and spitting slurs meant to drive her away. Eden endured every threat, every insult, and every attempt to strip her of her home. But when the violence turned too brutal to ignore, she was left with no choice. What the raiders never realized was that Eden was a legendary sniper, trained never to surrender. They thought she was fragile. They thought she'd run. They could not have been more wrong. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh-turned earth as Eden Marshall walked the irrigation lines, her boots leaving firm prints in the rich soil. Her trained eye caught every detail, checking for leaks, clogs, or wear that could threaten next season's crops. The land had been in her family for 3 generations, and she knew every inch of it like she once knew her rifle in Afghanistan. The setting sun painted everything in warm amber, casting long shadows across the cornfields. Eden paused to wipe sweat from her brow, her dark skin glowing in the golden hour light. The familiar weight of her father's old work gloves in her back pocket reminded her of all those who'd worked this earth before her. "Eden, supper's ready." Ruthie's voice carried clearly across the field, warm and strong despite her 63 years. "Don't let it get cold, baby." A small smile touched Eden's lips. Her mother's cooking was one of the things that had helped her find peace after returning from deployment. The rhythm of farm life, sunrise chores, afternoon maintenance, and evening meals with Mama had slowly rebuilt her sense of purpose. The distant rumble made her freeze mid-step. Eden's muscles tensed instinctively, her combat-trained senses immediately alert. The sound grew louder. Multiple engines, heavy vehicles, moving fast. Too fast for these dirt roads. 3 unmarked pickup trucks came roaring down their private road, kicking up clouds of dust. Eden's heart rate steadied as her military training kicked in. She counted 8 men in the vehicles, all wearing dark clothes, masks. "Mama!" Eden shouted, already running toward the house. "Inside! Now!" The trucks skidded to stops near the fence line. Men jumped out, wielding baseball bats and crowbars. The first swing sent wooden fence posts splintering. Another man charged toward the chicken coops, scattering terrified birds in explosions of feathers. Eden reached Ruthie on the porch, who stood frozen, watching the chaos unfold. "Good Lord in heaven," Ruthie whispered. "Get inside, Mama." "Now!" Eden's voice was steel, brooking no argument. She guided her mother through the door, locked it, and moved with practiced efficiency to the gun safe beside the coat rack. The raiders' shouts grew closer. "Time's up, Marshall. This land's got new owners now. You don't belong here no more." Eden's hands didn't shake as she loaded her rifle. The weight felt familiar, different from her military-issue weapon, but the principles remained the same. Breathe, focus, control. Through the window, she watched them advance across her yard. 8 men, just as she'd counted, moving with the reckless confidence of those who'd never faced real resistance. Their masks couldn't hide their poor tactical approach, clustering together, leaving themselves exposed. Ruthie stood in the kitchen doorway, her hand pressed against her chest. "Eden, baby, stay back from the windows, Mama." Eden's voice remained calm, even as rage burned in her chest. These men thought they could simply take what generations of her family had built, what her father had died protecting. She stepped onto the porch, rifle held ready, but not yet raised. "This is private property. Leave now." Laughter erupted from the group. One man stepped forward, swinging his bat against her mother's prized rose bushes. "Private property? Not for long, girl. Why don't you—" The crack of Eden's first shot cut through his words. The front tire of the nearest truck exploded, the vehicle lurching to one side. Before the echo faded, her second shot rang out, striking a metal fence post inches from the bat-wielder's head. The post sang like a tuning fork, its ring carrying across the sudden silence. The men staggered back, their cocky demeanor cracking. But instead of retreating, they regrouped. 2 raised hunting rifles of their own. Others spread out, trying to flank the porch. "That was your warning," Eden called out, her voice carrying the same tone she'd used directing troops. "The next one won't miss." "You can't shoot us all," one shouted back, but his voice wavered. Eden's finger rested steady on the trigger. She recognized the stance of the men with rifles. They were no soldiers. Their grips were sloppy, their stances unbalanced. These were bullies playing at being warriors. Want to test that theory? The setting sun was at her back now, forcing them to squint to see her. Another advantage. Just like the elevated position of the porch, just like the years of training that had taught her how to control a battlefield. More trucks appeared on the road, their headlights cutting through the growing dusk. The raiders seemed to draw courage from the reinforcements, pressing forward again. Eden's third shot cracked through the air, striking the ground at their feet, kicking up dirt and gravel. Her fourth shot followed immediately, destroying another tire. The precision of her attacks seemed to finally register with the raiders. These weren't lucky shots or blind firing. Each bullet went exactly where she intended. Behind her, through the screen door, she heard Ruthie's quiet prayers mixing with the sound of her dialing the phone. Good. They'd need witnesses to this. Need a record. "Last chance," Eden announced, her rifle never wavering. "Next shot goes center mass. Your choice." The raiders hesitated, looking at each other through their masks. Their formation had dissolved, their earlier bravado replaced by uncertainty. They hadn't expected resistance, hadn't expected to find someone who knew exactly how to fight back. One of them took a step forward, raising his rifle. Eden's breath slowed, her focus narrowing to her sights. She'd given them their warnings. If they forced her hand now, the raider with the raised rifle never got his shot off. A massive crash from the side of the house drew everyone's attention. Through the kitchen window, Eden caught a glimpse of a masked figure trying to force his way through the screen door. Her military training kicked in instantly. Threat assessment, target prioritization, action. She spun, driving the butt of her rifle into the intruder's sternum with crushing force. The man doubled over, gasping. Eden followed through with an upward strike that caught him square in the face. His mask tore away as he crumpled unconscious to the porch boards, blood streaming from his nose. "Nobody enters my house," Eden growled, already pivoting back to face the yard. The other raiders had used the distraction to advance. Eden's rifle cracked again, the bullet slicing cleanly through one man's mask, taking it with it as it whizzed past his ear. The exposed face went pale with shock as the mask fluttered to the ground. "Jesus Christ," someone muttered. "She ain't missing. She's choosing not to kill us." The acrid smell of smoke drifted across the yard. One of her chicken coops was burning, the frightened birds still scattering in panic. Eden's jaw clenched at the senseless destruction, but her hands remained steady as she reloaded, each motion precise and practiced. These men thought violence was their strength. They'd never faced someone who'd made it their profession. The raiders spread out in a loose semicircle, brandishing their weapons. Chains rattled, bats scraped across dirt. They were trying to surround the porch, present too many targets at once. Amateur tactics. Through the window behind her, Eden could hear Ruthie's prayers mixing with the crackle of flames. "Lord, protect my baby girl. Give her strength. Keep her safe. Eden didn't need divine intervention. She had training, skill, and righteous anger on her side. As the raiders began their second push, she went to work. The closest truck's headlights exploded in quick succession, plunging that section of yard into darkness. 2 shots. 2 direct hits. Before the glass finished falling, Eden was already shifting targets. A bullet kicked up dirt inches from a chain-wielding raider's foot, making him dance backward with a yelp. Another round ricocheted off a steel fence post with a musical ping, the deflected bullet sending 3 more men diving for cover. Crap! She's playing with us! Rush her! She can't get us all! A burly raider charged up the porch steps, swinging a length of pipe. Eden sidestepped, letting the wild swing pass by. Her knee drove up into his gut, doubling him over. She grabbed his collar and slammed his face into the wooden railing with precise force. Enough to stun, not kill. He slumped to the boards, moaning. The others watched their companion go down, hesitating. Eden used the moment to pick off 2 more truck tires, the explosions making the raiders flinch. Every shot served a purpose, controlling space, denying approach angles, demoralizing her attackers. "Who the hell is this woman?" one of them shouted. A raider with a shotgun tried to circle around the side of the house. Eden put a round through his weapon's barrel, rendering it useless. The man dropped it like it was on fire, stumbling backward. Another tried to reach the unconscious man on her porch. Eden's bullet splintered the floorboard between his reaching hands. He scrambled back, cursing. "Fall back! Regroup!" The voice carried authority, despite its obvious frustration. Eden tracked the speaker through her sights. He was larger than the others, directing their movements with angry gestures. As he turned to shout another order, his mask slipped. The face beneath was young, twisted with rage, and familiar. Trent Copley, Sheriff Ray Copley's nephew. The recognition was mutual. His eyes widened, then narrowed with fury as he realized who had just humiliated his raid. "Marshal," he spat. "Should have known it was you. Think you're some kind of soldier?" "I don't think anything," Eden replied coldly. "I know exactly what I am, and what you are." Trent yanked his mask back up, but the damage was done. "This ain't over. You hear me? This land's got a destiny, and it ain't with your kind." "My kind?" Eden's finger tightened slightly on the trigger. "You mean farmers? Landowners? Veterans? You know very well what I mean." Trent backed toward the remaining trucks, trying to maintain his swagger. "We'll be back, with more men, better equipped." "I'll be here," Eden promised. Her tone made several raiders visibly shiver. The trucks roared to life, those with flat tires squealing on their rims as they retreated. Trent was the last to leave, his mask still askew as he glared at Eden. She kept her rifle trained on them until the last vehicle disappeared in a cloud of dust and exhaust. The yard fell silent except for the buzz of floodlights and the distant crackle of the burning coupe. Small red lights blinked steadily from security cameras mounted under the eaves, recording devices Eden had installed after too many accidents at neighboring farms. The screen door creaked open. Ruthie rushed out, wrapping her arms around Eden's waist. Eden finally lowered her rifle, letting her mother's warmth seep into her combat-tense muscles. "My brave girl," Ruthie whispered, her voice shaking but proud. "My strong, brave girl." Eden's gaze remained fixed on the road where the raiders had vanished. Every second of the attack was saved on encrypted drives. Every face, every action, every threat captured in high definition. Let them come back. She'd be ready. The morning sun revealed the full extent of the destruction. Eden stood in her yard, coffee growing cold in her hands as she surveyed the damage. The chicken coop was a blackened skeleton, wisps of smoke still rising from the ashes. Broken fence posts jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Tire tracks carved deep ruts through her carefully tended soil. Inside the farmhouse, Eden heard Ruthie moving about, getting dressed for court. She took another sip of coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. On the porch, a thick manila folder sat waiting. Inside were screenshots from the security footage, showing masked men with weapons, Trent Copley's exposed face, the attempted break-in. Clear evidence of a coordinated attack. "Baby, help me with these buttons," Ruthie called from inside. "These old fingers aren't what they used to be." Eden set down her coffee and went to help. Her mother stood before the mirror in her Sunday best, a navy blue dress she saved for special occasions. Her hands trembled slightly as Eden fastened the small pearl buttons up the back. "You sure about wearing your uniform?" Ruthie asked, eyeing Eden's pressed army service dress in the mirror. "Yes, ma'am," Eden replied, smoothing her mother's collar. "They need to remember who they're dealing with. A veteran who served this country with honor. They'll try to use it against you," Ruthie warned. "Make you sound dangerous." "I am dangerous," Eden said quietly, "but only to those who deserve it." The drive to the courthouse was tense. Eden kept checking her rearview mirror, watching for followers. The manila folder sat heavy in her lap. Ruthie hummed hymns under her breath, her way of staying calm. They found Pastor Lenora waiting on the courthouse steps, her clerical collar stark white against her dark suit. A small group of supporters stood with her, including Zara Chen, who was already filming with her phone. "Good morning, sisters," Pastor Lenora embraced them both. "We're here to support you. The truth will prevail." "Truth needs help sometimes," Eden replied, patting the folder. Inside, the hearing room was already packed. Sheriff Copley sat at the front table, his uniform crisp, brass badges gleaming. Beside him, Trent slouched in a suit that looked borrowed, his face sporting theatrical bandages. Eden's jaw tightened at the sight. "All rise," the bailiff called. The three commissioners filed in, led by Chairman Wallace, a man whose family had held power in the county since before Eden was born. "We're here to address serious allegations of assault and threatening behavior," Wallace began, shuffling papers. "Sheriff Copley, please present your case." Copley stood, his thumbs hooked in his gun belt. "Last night, my nephew Trent was leading a neighborhood watch patrol, checking on reports of suspicious activity near the Marshall property. Without warning or provocation, Eden Marshall opened fire on these concerned citizens. Murmurs rippled through the room. Eden's hands clenched beneath the table. "Trent, please describe what happened," Copley continued. Trent limped to the witness chair, wincing dramatically. "We were just doing our civic duty, you know. Then suddenly, bullets everywhere. She was shooting to kill, I'm sure of it. I barely got away with my life." Eden started to rise, but Ruthie's hand on her arm kept her seated. "We have multiple witnesses who will testify to Ms. Marshall's increasingly erratic behavior," Copley added. "Given her military background and apparent instability, we request an immediate suspension of her weapons permits and a review of her water rights, as she's clearly a danger to the community." "Objection!" Pastor Lenora stood. "This is a transparent attempt to—" "Pastor Gaines, you're not recognized," Wallace cut her off. "This isn't a court of law." "Exactly," Copley smiled. "This is an administrative hearing to protect public safety. And I move that we act immediately to contain this threat." Eden finally rose, her uniform commanding attention. "I have evidence—" "Ms. Marshall," Wallace interrupted. "You'll have your turn. Commissioner Thompson, your thoughts?" Thompson, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Given the severity of these allegations, I move we suspend Ms. Marshall's water rights pending a full investigation." "Seconded," the third commissioner said quickly. "This is an outrage," Pastor Lenora's voice rang out. "Eden Marshall defended her property from armed attackers. Where's the investigation into that?" "Order!" Wallace banged his gavel. "Pastor Gaines, one more outburst, and you'll be removed." In the back of the room, Zara's phone captured everything. The commissioner's dismissive glances, Copley's smug expression, Trent's exaggerated limp as he returned to his seat. "The motion carries," Wallace declared. "Ms. Marshall's water rights are suspended pending review. Additionally, the Sheriff's Department will investigate charges of brandishing and assault. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel fell with finality. Eden stood rigid, her service medals catching the fluorescent light. Ruthie gripped her Bible so tight her knuckles went white. Outside on the courthouse steps, supporters gathered around Eden and Ruthie. Pastor Lenora was already organizing a prayer vigil. Zara pushed through the crowd, phone still recording. "Eden, can I get a statement?" Zara asked, her eyes bright with righteous anger. "People need to hear the truth." Eden looked out over the town square, where Copley and Trent were holding their own impromptu press conference. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "This isn't just about me," she told Zara's camera. "They want every farm like mine, every black-owned piece of land that stands in their way." But they picked the wrong farmer to start with. The evening sun cast long shadows across Eden's farmyard as cars began pulling up the dirt drive. Neighbors emerged bearing covered dishes and determination. The porch quickly filled with the smell of Pastor Lenora's famous cornbread and Miguel's spicy enchiladas. "Y'all didn't have to do this," Eden protested weakly, though her heart swelled at the sight of so many familiar faces. "Hush now, Mrs." Jenkins said, settling her sweet potato pie on the crowded kitchen counter. "When trouble comes, we come together. That's how it's always been." Ruthie sat in her favorite armchair, holding court as people stopped to squeeze her hand or kiss her cheek. Her earlier tension had eased somewhat, replaced by the comfort of community. Eden watched her mother's smile return, bit by bit, with each new arrival. Miguel worked his way through the crowd, a toolbox in one hand and a casserole dish in the other. "Where do you want the motion sensors installed?" he asked Eden quietly. "I brought some extra wire, too." "Later," Eden replied, touching his arm gratefully. "Let's eat first." The kitchen hummed with conversation and the clink of plates. People packed onto the porch, perched on steps, or gathered in small groups in the yard. The destruction from the previous night's attack was still visible, but somehow the presence of neighbors made it feel less raw. Zara moved through the crowd with her phone, capturing snippets of conversation and quick interviews. "This is what community looks like," she narrated softly. "This is what they're really trying to destroy." A knock at the screen door drew Eden's attention. Darla Meeks stood there, clutching a battered shoebox to her chest. Her county clerk's badge still hung around her neck, but her usual cautious expression had been replaced by one of quiet determination. "Can we talk?" Darla asked. "Somewhere private?" Eden led her to the study, where her father's old desk still held pride of place. Miguel followed, and Zara slipped in just before Eden closed the door. Darla set the shoebox on the desk with trembling hands. "What I'm about to show you could cost me my job," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't stay quiet anymore." She opened the box, revealing dozens of property deeds, some yellowed with age. "I've been tracking the pattern for months. Black-owned farms disappearing piece by piece. The paperwork always looks perfect on the surface, but look closer." Eden spread the documents across the desk. Miguel leaned in, his electrician's eyes catching details others might miss. "These signatures don't match," he pointed out. "And these dates, something's not right." "Exactly," Darla nodded. "They're using a nonprofit called Agricultural Heritage Preservation as a front. They pressure owners to sell or create fake transfers when that doesn't work. Then the land gets flipped to developers like Kincaid Industries." Zara's fingers flew across her phone's screen. "Agricultural Heritage Preservation. Their board of directors includes Thomas Copley, the sheriff's brother. And look who their biggest donor is. Kincaid Industries, Eden finished grimly. The same company trying to build that warehouse complex on the north side of town. It's bigger than that. Darla pulled out more papers. They've been targeting black-owned farms across 3 counties. Your family's land is one of the last holdouts in this area. That's why they're coming at you so hard. Miguel studied a map marked with red X's. These properties all share something: access to the aquifer. They're not just after land, they're after water rights. Which is exactly what they suspended at the hearing today, Zara added, her voice tight with anger. It's all connected. Eden's hands found her father's old fountain pen, the one he'd used to sign every important document in his life. She pulled out the Marshall family deed from her father's desk drawer. The original, kept safe through 3 generations. My great-grandfather bought this land with cash he saved picking cotton, she said, her voice low and intense. He worked someone else's fields by day and cleared this land by night. My grandfather expanded it during the Depression, when other farms were failing. My father modernized it, put me through college with these fields. She spread her hands flat on the deed, the paper cool beneath her palms. They think they can erase all that with forged papers and crooked deals. They think they can bully and threaten us off our own land. The room fell silent, except for the distant sounds of conversation from the porch. Through the window, Eden could see fireflies beginning to dance in the gathering dusk. Her mother's laugh drifted in, mixed with the voices of neighbors who'd known her since she was a girl. We'll need to document everything, Zara said finally. Build a timeline, connect the dots. This is exactly the kind of story that can't be ignored once it's exposed. I can get more records, Darla offered, but we'll have to be careful. They'll be watching now. Miguel nodded. I'll help match up dates, properties, shell companies. My cousin's a forensic accountant. She might be able to follow the money trail. Eden stood, her decision made. Holding her father's pen, she wrote the date on a blank page, then signed her name with the same bold strokes he had always used. Below it, she wrote a single sentence. They will not take this land. This is our home, she said simply, and we're going to prove exactly how they tried to steal it. Through the study window, more cars were arriving, more neighbors coming to stand with them. The Marshall farm had always been a gathering place, a source of strength for the community. Tonight, that strength flowed both ways, from the land to its people and back again. The next morning's sun barely pierced the heavy clouds hanging over the Marshall farm. Eden stood at the kitchen counter, mechanically stirring her coffee while the morning news played on their small TV. Ruthie sat in her chair, shelling peas into a large metal bowl, her eyes narrowed at the screen. Elliot Kincaid's polished smile filled the frame as he stood at a podium downtown, his suit perfectly pressed, his manner smooth as silk. Behind him, crisp banners proclaimed, "Growing Together," in bold letters, decorated with a stylized tree logo. Our Agricultural Heritage Initiative represents a vital step forward for this county, Kincaid announced, his voice dripping with practiced sincerity. We are not just preserving farmland, we are transforming it into sustainable business opportunities that will benefit everyone. Snake, Ruthie muttered, her fingers never stopping their steady rhythm with the peas. Talking about preserving while he's trying to steal everything we have. Eden leaned against the counter, studying Kincaid's performance. He gestured to elaborate charts showing projected job growth and property values. The camera panned across a row of nodding officials, including Sheriff Copley in his pressed uniform. We understand change can be difficult, Kincaid continued, but we can't let a few resistant elements hold back progress. Our community deserves better than outdated farming practices and underutilized land. Ruthie's bowl clattered as she dropped it on the side table. Underutilized? Your daddy would rise from his grave if he heard them calling this land underutilized. She pointed at the screen with a handful of pea pods. That man wouldn't know honest work if it bit him on his $1,000 shoes. The doorbell rang, and Eden tensed until she heard young voices on the porch. She opened the door to find Mrs. Johnson's grandchildren, Tommy and Lisa, bouncing with excitement. "Mama Ruthie said she'd teach us about the garden today," Lisa announced, her braids bobbing. Ruthie's face softened immediately. "Come on in, children. Grab yourselves some bowls. These peas won't shell themselves." Eden watched as her mother settled the children on either side of her chair, showing them how to split the pods just so, explaining which peas were ready and which needed more time. The TV continued its broadcast in the background, but the children's chatter drowned out Kincaid's rhetoric. "Now, you feel how these are firm, but not hard," Ruthie demonstrated with a pod. "That's when you know they're perfect. Your great-grandmother taught me this, and her mama taught her." Tommy struggled with a stubborn pod. "Did you learn everything about farming from your mama, Mama Ruthie?" "Some from my mama, some from my daddy, and some from watching and listening," Ruthie replied. "That's how knowledge gets passed down. Can't learn everything about the land from books and computers." Eden started to turn away, but something on the TV caught her eye. The camera had zoomed in on Kincaid's banner, that stylized tree logo prominent in the corner. Something about it tugged at her memory. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the security footage from the raid. There, a frame showing Trent Copley's jacket as his mask fell away. On the sleeve, barely visible in the floodlights, was an embroidered patch with the same tree logo. "Those children are our future," Kincaid was saying on TV. "We owe them more than outdated traditions." Eden's jaw tightened as she studied the footage again. The same logo appeared on several raiders' jackets, though she hadn't noticed it in the chaos of the attack. Now, it was right there on television, connecting Kincaid directly to the violence he claimed to deplore. The news cut to Sheriff Copley standing beside Kincaid at the podium. "We're committed to maintaining order during this transition period," he declared. "Those who resist progress through violence will face consequences." After the press conference, the camera followed Kincaid and Copley into the parking lot. Though the microphones couldn't pick up their conversation, the sheriff's tense posture and Kincaid's sharp gestures told their own story. Kincaid jabbed a finger at Copley's chest, his smooth public manner replaced by obvious anger. "Look at that," Ruthie observed quietly. "The puppet master ain't happy with his puppet." "Miss Eden?" Lisa looked up from her peas. "Are the bad men going to come back?" Eden knelt beside the little girl's chair. "Don't you worry about that. This farm has stood strong for a long time, and it's going to keep standing." "Tommy says his daddy says we should be scared," Lisa persisted. "Being scared is natural," Ruthie interjected. "But being brave means doing what's right even when you're scared. Now, tell me what you see in this pea pod." As the children returned to their lesson, Eden slipped out to her workshop behind the house. The familiar smell of oil and metal greeted her as she unlocked the heavy door. Her military gear was stored in a hidden compartment beneath the workbench, untouched since she'd returned from her last deployment. The sniper scope caught the morning light as she lifted it from its case, the precision glass still perfect under a thin layer of dust. She laid it carefully on the workbench, then began removing other pieces of equipment: rangefinder, wind gauge, ammunition boxes marked with detailed specifications. Eden ran her fingers over the scope's familiar contours, remembering years of training, countless hours perfecting her skills. She'd hoped never to need them again, had wanted only to work the land in peace. But now, those same skills might be all that stood between her family's heritage and those who would destroy it. Dawn painted the kitchen walls in soft grays as Eden spread maps across the table. Her coffee grew cold, untouched, while she marked positions with careful precision. The farmhouse layout, the surrounding fields, every tree line and natural barrier. She studied them all with a soldier's eye. The rumble of trucks made her look up sharply, but these were friendly engines. Miguel's battered pickup rolled into the yard, followed by Pastor Lenora's station wagon and 3 more vehicles loaded with supplies. Eden watched through the window as neighbors climbed out, carrying tools and building materials. Ruthie was already up, the kitchen filling with the smell of biscuits and coffee. "They're here early," she said, pulling another tray from the oven. "Good people know when to stand together." Eden nodded, gathering her maps. Outside, the morning air was crisp, dew still clinging to the grass. Miguel approached with a clipboard, his work boots muddy from an early start. "Got the supplies you asked for," he said, handing her a list. "The motion sensors are basic, but I can wire them to your security system. Thompson brought his post hole digger, and Pastor Lenora's got half her congregation coming." "Thank you," Eden replied, her voice quiet but firm. "We'll start with the perimeter." She led the growing group of volunteers to the farm's edge, where the old fence stood damaged from the raid. With practiced authority, she outlined her plan, pointing out key positions and vulnerabilities. These weren't soldiers, but they listened with the same respect she'd earned from her unit. "We're not just fixing fences," she explained. "We're creating defensive positions. Every post needs to be reinforced. Every gate needs multiple fail-safes." Pastor Lenora stepped forward, her strong voice carrying across the gathering. "Before we begin, let us pray." She raised her hands, and heads bowed. "Lord, bless this land and those who defend it. Guide our hands in this work of protection, not destruction. Amen." The work began in earnest. Post-hole diggers bit into earth, cement mixers churned, and new fence sections rose stronger than before. Eden moved between groups, adjusting positions, ensuring sight lines remained clear from her planned observation points. In what looked like simple deer stands, she designed hidden sniper nests. Each position offered coverage of critical approaches, carefully disguised among the trees. Miguel helped her wire motion sensors into natural features, rocks, stumps, even birdhouses that would alert them to any movement. "These cameras," he said, installing weatherproof units, "they'll feed directly to your secure server. Nobody can hack or disable them without you knowing." Ruthie's kitchen became a command center of sorts. She kept workers fed and hydrated, her table now hosting blueprints beside plates of biscuits and pitchers of sweet tea. Between serving food, she shared stories of the farm's history, reminding everyone what they were fighting to protect. "My grandfather built that barn with his own hands," she told a group resting in the shade. "Said every nail was a promise to the future. We mean to keep that promise." By mid-afternoon, the transformation was taking shape. New fencing gleamed in the sun, topped with subtle but effective defensive features. Motion sensors nestled invisibly in the landscape. Communication lines ran underground, connecting every part of the property to Eden's security system. Pastor Lenora worked alongside everyone else, her clerical collar damp with sweat. "This is holy work," she declared, helping to camouflage one of the observation posts. "Protecting what's right is always holy work." Eden climbed to check each position personally, testing sight lines and cover. From these vantage points, she could see every approach to the farm. Her sniper's training merged with her farmer's knowledge. Every field, every dip in the land, now served dual purposes. As the sun began its descent, the last workers packed up their tools. Ruthie handed out containers of leftovers, hugging each person who had come to help. Pastor Lenora gathered everyone for a final prayer, her words both blessing and battle cry. "We are more than neighbors today," she proclaimed. "We are witnesses and warriors in a righteous cause. Let all who would destroy this place know that they face not one farmer, but an entire community. Eden waited until the last vehicle disappeared down the dirt road before climbing to her highest observation post. The setting sun painted the reinforced farm in shades of gold and shadow. Through her scope, she studied the improvements, noting how natural they looked despite their strength. The familiar weight of the rifle settled against her shoulder as she scanned the perimeter. Motion sensors blinked silently, cameras whirred on their mounts, and the new gates stood solid in their frames. Her scope caught every detail: the reinforced posts, the hidden barriers, the clear fields of fire that looked like simple farming layouts to untrained eyes. In the distance, Ruthie stood on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron as she surveyed their work. Even from here, Eden could see her mother's proud stance. The farm had always been their home, their heritage. Now it was their fortress too, though few would recognize it as such. Through the scope, Eden watched the last light fade across her fields. The land looked peaceful, productive, exactly as it should. But beneath that peaceful surface lay a web of defense and surveillance that would make any attacker regret their choices. Her finger rested naturally beside the trigger guard, comfortable with both its presence and its purpose. The county library's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Zara spread another stack of documents across the worn wooden table. Her laptop screen glowed with dozens of open tabs, each one tracking a different piece of Kincaid's maze-like business dealings. Beside her, Darla methodically worked through property records, her decades of experience as county clerk, making patterns visible where others saw only chaos. "Look at this," Darla whispered, sliding a deed across the table. Her finger traced a line of signatures. Same notary stamp on all of these, but the dates don't match up. She retired 3 years before these were supposedly signed. Zara leaned in, snapping photos with her phone. "Good catch. And look at the LLC names: Crystal Creek Holdings, Riverside Development Group, Blue Valley Enterprises. All registered within days of each other. Same lawyer's office." They worked in the library's back room, away from curious eyes. Papers covered every surface: property records, tax documents, incorporation filings, and foreclosure notices. Each sheet represented a family's loss, a piece of heritage stripped away through carefully constructed legal theft. "Here's another connection," Darla said, her voice tight with controlled anger. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her tablet. Every foreclosure notice was served by the sheriff's department, even though that's usually the bank's job. And look at the timing, always late Friday afternoons, giving families minimal time to respond before Monday court dates. Pastor Lenora sat at a nearby table, surrounded by elderly members of her congregation. Her recorder captured their stories as they spoke of lands lost, promises broken, and generations of work undone by suspicious paperwork and sudden legal challenges. "They came with papers saying our mortgage was in default," Mrs. Johnson, an 80-year-old former teacher, recalled. Her hand shook as she held a faded photograph of her family's former farm. "But we'd never missed a payment. By the time we proved that, they'd already sold the land to one of those companies." Zara's fingers flew across her keyboard, connecting dots. Kincaid's nonprofit, Future Growth Initiative, received millions in grants for community development. But look where that money went. Straight into these shell companies buying foreclosed properties. Darla nodded grimly. And every company traces back to the same bank account at First State Bank, where Sheriff Copley sits on the board of directors. The afternoon light slanted through dusty windows as they pieced together the scheme. Pastor Lenora moved between tables, offering encouragement and collecting more stories. Each elder's testimony added another layer to the pattern of theft and intimidation. The sheriff's department would show up for inspections right before harvest, Mr. Washington explained, his weathered face stern with memory. Find some violation that needed immediate fixing. Cost us thousands we didn't have. right when we needed money most. Zara pulled up emails obtained through public records requests. "Look at this exchange between Copley and Kincaid," she said, turning her screen. "Target properties identified. Proceeding with Phase 1 enforcement." That was sent 3 days before the first wave of inspections hit Black-owned farms. More documents revealed the careful coordination. Health Department citations appeared just as bank loans came due. Water rights suddenly needed review when farmers refused to sell. Each piece of evidence showed how the system had been weaponized against its own citizens. "They didn't just take land," Pastor Lenora said, reviewing her recordings. "They took history. They took future. Every farm lost means children and grandchildren with no legacy to inherit." Darla discovered a pattern in the property transfers. See how they move the deeds between companies? It's like a shell game. By the time a family fights one transfer, the land's been sold 3 more times. Makes it nearly impossible to track or challenge. The library's closing announcement echoed through the speakers. But they worked on. Zara organized the evidence into clear timelines. Darla certified copies of key documents. Pastor Lenora transcribed testimonies that brought the cold paper trail to living, breathing life. "Got it," Zara finally said, straightening up. "Complete chain of evidence. The nonprofit funnels grant money to shell companies. Companies target farms through coordinated harassment. Sheriff's Department provides muscle. Properties get flipped to developers. Every step documented." They packed the evidence carefully, making multiple copies. Darla's hands moved with practiced efficiency, stamping and certifying each duplicate. Pastor Lenora prayed over the files, her words both blessing and promise of justice. Later that evening, Eden sat at her kitchen table scanning documents into her laptop. Each deed, email, and testimony built a wall of evidence against those who thought they could steal with impunity. The injunction form glowed on her screen, every field filled with precise detail. Her mother watched from the doorway as Eden worked, attention focused on each page feeding through the scanner. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, marking time as years of corruption were exposed, one sheet at a time. "Your father would be proud," Ruthie said softly, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside her daughter. "He always said truth was like water. It finds its way out, no matter what." Eden nodded, continuing to work. The uploaded files grew into a digital fortress of facts, dates, and signatures. Each scanned page added weight to their case, turning suspicions into certainties and accusations into evidence. Finally, she clicked Submit on the injunction filing. The computer hummed as hundreds of pages of proof flowed through secure channels to the federal courthouse. Eden sat back, her face set with determination. The law that had been twisted against her people would now become their shield. As Eden filed the last of the documents, a chorus of dogs erupted in the darkness. Their barks echoed across the farm. Not just her own shepherd, but the neighbors' hounds too, all raising a unified alarm. She moved to the window, her body tensing as twin beams of light swept across the distant tree line. "Mama, get down to the basement," Eden said calmly, already reaching for her rifle. Ruthie nodded and moved quickly, years of practice making her steps silent, even in haste. Through her scope, Eden counted the vehicles, 3 trucks moving slow, their headlights off now as they crept along the access road. She pressed a button on her radio, and Miguel's voice crackled back. "In position." Eden's finger tapped another switch. Brilliant white light exploded across the farm as industrial floodlights blazed to life. The yard lit up like daylight, catching the raiders in the open. They wore masks again, but their movements were clumsy with surprise. "Last chance to turn around," Eden called out, her voice carrying across the suddenly illuminated space. The raiders hesitated, Then one shouted, and they charged forward. Eden's rifle cracked once. The lead truck's engine died with a screech of metal on metal, steam hissing from its punctured radiator. The precision shot had threaded between other components, targeting the engine block exactly. "Holy crap," someone whispered in the sudden silence. The raiders regrouped, spreading out with flashlights, sweeping the darkness beyond the floodlit zone. Eden's second shot shattered one of the lights, the glass tinkling as it rained down. The man holding it yelped and stumbled backward. From the shadows, phones and cameras recorded everything. Eden had positioned her neighbors carefully. Miguel on the west side, Pastor Lenora's son in the trees to the east, Zara's team by the north fence. Every angle covered, every action documented. A raider swung a crowbar at one of the security cameras. Eden's third shot split the metal tool in half, the pieces clattering to the ground. The man stared at the broken handle in his hand, then threw it down and ran. That broke their nerve. Raiders scrambled back to their vehicles, tripping over each other in their panic. Engines roared as they tried to turn around in the tight space. One truck's tires spun in the mud, and Eden's fourth shot took out its back tire, the rubber shredding with a loud pop. "She's not human!" someone screamed. The remaining trucks fishtailed as they accelerated away, leaving their disabled companion behind. The driver and passengers abandoned it, sprinting into the darkness. For several minutes, only the buzz of the floodlights and the settling sounds of dogs broke the silence. Then Miguel emerged from his hiding spot, walking toward Eden with a low whistle. "You've scared them off," he said, looking at the abandoned truck still steaming in the yard. Eden lowered her rifle slowly, scanning the shadows. "Not enough," she replied. "They'll escalate." She climbed down from her position as neighbors emerged from their observation posts. The air smelled of gunpowder and crushed grass. Zara rushed over, holding up her phone triumphantly. "Got everything," she said. "Crystal clear footage from 3 angles. They can't deny this one." Eden nodded but kept scanning the darkness beyond the lights. Her training told her to stay alert. The immediate threat was gone, but the night wasn't over. The dogs had settled, but remained tense, tracking something in the distance. Miguel examined the disabled truck while Pastor Lenora's son called the sheriff's department, not because they expected help, but to establish an official record. Eden knew deputies would take their time responding, probably waiting until the truck somehow disappeared. "Look at this," Miguel said, waving Eden over. He pointed to a stack of papers in the truck's back seat. Building permits, already filled out with tomorrow's date. Eden's jaw tightened. The raiders hadn't come just to intimidate this time. They'd planned to start construction, probably thought they could force the issue with physical presence. The permits would have made it harder to remove any structures they managed to start. "Smart thinking with the engine shot," Miguel continued, examining the precise hole in the radiator. "Disable the vehicle without risking anyone's life. Your old sergeant taught you well." "Wasn't trying to teach them a lesson," Eden said, checking the perimeter one more time. "Just making sure they couldn't hurt anyone else." The neighbors helped document everything. Tire tracks, shell casings, dropped tools. Each piece of evidence carefully photographed and logged. Eden had taught them military precision in these tasks, knowing every detail might matter later. Ruthie emerged from the basement once Eden gave the all-clear. She moved through the yard with purpose, checking on the frightened animals, soothing them with practiced hands and soft words. The chicken coop had been rattled, but not damaged this time. "They're learning," Ruthie said as she worked. "Learning you won't be scared away. Learning this land remembers who it belongs to." Eden helped her mother with the animals, their movements synchronized from years of working together. The night air had grown cool, and Eden could smell rain approaching. Good weather for the crops, she thought automatically, even in the midst of all this. The neighbors gradually dispersed, each taking copies of their recordings, each knowing their role in what would come next. Miguel stayed to help Eden repair the damaged fence section where the raiders had first pushed through. The floodlights still blazed, pushing back the darkness, creating a circle of harsh clarity around the farm. Eden left them on. Let them see, she thought. Let them know we're watching. Let them know we're ready. The morning sun blazed down on the courthouse steps as Eden and Ruthie made their way through the crowd. Supporters packed the wide stone staircase, holding handmade signs and wearing T-shirts with "Stand with Eden" printed across the front. Pastor Lenora's congregation stood together, their Sunday best bright against the gray stone building. Eden walked tall, her back straight, dressed in a crisp blue button-down tucked into pressed jeans. She'd polished her work boots until they gleamed. Ruthie kept pace beside her in a flowered dress, her silver hair catching the light. They looked like what they were, farmers who worked their land with pride. Eden! Eden! The chants started soft, then grew louder as people recognized them. Hands reached out to touch their shoulders, offer encouragement. Children from the church waved small flags with their farm's logo. Miguel and his family had brought their instruments, guitars and a small drum, ready to celebrate or protest depending on the outcome. Zara pushed through the crowd with her camera rolling. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked, holding out her microphone. "Feeling blessed by all this support," Ruthie answered before Eden could speak. "The Lord provides advocates for the righteous." Inside the courtroom, every bench was filled. Even the bailiff had trouble maintaining order as more people tried to squeeze in. Sheriff Copley sat near the front, his face twisted in a scowl. His nephew Trent was notably absent. Judge Martinez called the room to order, her gavel sharp against the wood. "This hearing concerns the emergency injunction filed by Eden Marshall regarding water rights to her family farm." Eden's lawyer rose, presenting the evidence they'd gathered. The forged documents, the shell companies, the pattern of harassment. Photos from the raids flashed across screens. The judge studied each exhibit carefully, her expression neutral. When Sheriff Copley's lawyer tried to interrupt, Judge Martinez cut him off. "I've reviewed the surveillance footage. I've seen the permit applications dated before properties were legally acquired. Do not insult this court's intelligence." A murmur ran through the crowd. Eden felt Ruthie's hand squeeze her arm. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the attempt to restrict water access appears to be a clear violation of existing easement laws." She shuffled papers, then looked directly at Eden. "The injunction is granted. All water rights are to be immediately restored. Any interference will result in contempt charges." The courtroom erupted. Pastor Lenora's "Hallelujah" rang out above the cheers. Eden remained still, letting the victory sink in slowly. But Ruthie was already hugging her, tears flowing freely. Outside, the celebration spilled down the courthouse steps. Miguel's family struck up a victory song, the rhythm catching on as people clapped and danced. Children threw flower petals saved from Sunday service. Even passing cars honked in support, drivers waving as they recognized what was happening. "Party at the farm!" someone called out. The crowd took up the cry. Eden looked at Ruthie, who nodded, smiling. "Been too long since we had proper joy on that land," her mother said. As the sun set that evening, cars lined the dirt road to their farm. Folding tables appeared, loaded with covered dishes. Pastor Lenora's famous sweet potato pie, Miguel's wife's tamales, Darla's cornbread, dishes from every kitchen that had supported them. Strings of lights hung from the old pecan tree, transforming the space where they'd fought raiders just days before. Now music floated through the branches, and children played tag between the adults' legs. The air smelled of good food and summer flowers. Eden moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and congratulations. She noticed how people had naturally spread out to guard the property lines while they celebrated. Miguel's cousins by the north fence, church deacons walking the east border. younger folks casually patrolling the West. Even in victory, they stayed vigilant. Ruthie held court from her favorite chair, telling stories about Eden's grandfather working this same land. Young parents brought their children to listen, knowing they were hearing history that textbooks wouldn't teach. The oral tradition continued, passing strength to the next generation. When Miguel's son started playing a slow song on his guitar, Ruthie stood up and held out her hand to Eden. "Dance with your mama," she commanded. Eden hesitated. She hadn't danced since before her deployment, but Ruthie insisted. They swayed together under the lights, mother and daughter, moving to the gentle music. Eden remembered learning these steps as a child, Ruthie guiding her across their kitchen floor. Now she led, supporting her mother's smaller frame, their shadows merging on the grass. "Your daddy would be so proud," Ruthie whispered. "He always said you had his fire, and my sense." The song ended, and others took their turn dancing. Eden stepped back, watching her community celebrate. Darla's granddaughter taught Pastor Lenora's son some new dance moves. Miguel played his guitar while his wife sang. Paper plates and plastic cups filled with good food passed from hand to hand. Later, as the crowd began to thin and the night grew cooler, Eden found herself alone under the pecan tree. The lights twinkled above her like stars brought down to earth. She could hear Ruthie's laugh from the porch, still entertaining the last guests. She touched the rough bark of the tree, feeling the strength that had weathered countless storms. "Maybe we can win," she whispered, the words carrying her hopes into the darkness. Eden stood in her kitchen, staring at the empty seed trays. The spring planting window was closing fast, and her seed order had vanished into thin air. The shipping company claimed no record of it, despite her confirmation number. "Third supplier this week to have problems with our order," Ruthie said from her chair by the window. She was mending one of Eden's work shirts, her needle flashing in the morning light. "Just like the feed store suddenly being out of everything we need." Eden's jaw tightened. She'd expected pushback after winning the injunction, but this was different. A slow stranglehold designed to choke their farm without leaving evidence. Her phone buzzed. A text from Miguel. "Deputies pulled me over again. Third time this week. Said my trailer lights were out. They weren't." Before she could respond, another message came through, this time from Darla. "They're parked outside my store, checking permits all day. Scaring customers away." Eden's hands clenched around her phone. She'd seen the patrol cars circling like vultures, targeting anyone who'd stood with them at the courthouse. Pastor Lenora had found her church's parking lot blocked by routine inspections every Sunday. The message was clear: support Eden Marshall, face consequences. Zara arrived around noon, her usual energy dampened. Dark circles showed under her eyes. "They got my podcast removed," she said, dropping into a kitchen chair. "Platform says it violated community guidelines. But that's not the worst part." She pulled out her phone, showing Eden a series of messages. Death threats, detailed descriptions of her home, pictures of her car taken at night. "I'm not stopping," Zara said quickly. "But people need to know what's happening. They're not just coming after the farms anymore. They're trying to silence everyone who speaks up." The local news played in the background, Sheriff Copley's face filling the screen. Eden turned up the volume. "Ms. Marshall's military background raises serious concerns," Copley was saying, his voice oily with fake concern. "We have reports of her threatening peaceful citizens with military-grade tactics. This kind of unstable behavior." Ruthie's needle stabbed through the fabric. "Peaceful citizens? Those raiders nearly killed our chickens." Eden switched off the TV, but the damage was done. She'd seen the comments online, people calling her dangerous, unhinged. The same tactics used against every black farmer who dared defend their land, paint them as violent, crazy, a threat to public safety. Her phone rang, An unknown number, but Eden answered anyway. "Ms. Marshall." The voice was smooth, professional. "This is Claire from Kincaid Development's PR team. Mr. Kincaid asked me to extend an invitation to discuss your situation privately. He believes we can reach an amicable solution." Eden's voice was ice. "Nothing to discuss. My land's not for sale. Mr. Kincaid wanted me to remind you that the injunction is temporary. He's very confident about the final outcome. It would be better for everyone if—" Eden hung up. Minutes later, a video link appeared in her messages, footage of Kincaid at some investor meeting, wearing his $1,000 suit. "The Marshall property is a minor setback," he was saying, gesturing at a map of planned developments. "These holdouts never last. Banks foreclose, equipment fails, supplies run short. Time and pressure work better than force. By harvest season, that land will be ours." The investors laughed. Eden closed the video, her chest tight with fury. She walked outside, needing air, needing to touch the soil they were so determined to steal. The afternoon sun was fading, painting long shadows across her fields. She checked the irrigation lines, adjusted the sensors Miguel had installed. Everything looked normal, but the peace felt false, fragile. An engine sound caught her ear. Trucks, moving slow on the back roads that bordered her property. She climbed one of her hidden platforms, using her scope to check. 3 vehicles, circling, taking different routes, but always keeping her farm in sight. Watching, measuring, planning. Eden climbed down, every muscle tense. She'd seen this pattern before, in other places, other fights. The enemy probing defenses, testing reactions, gathering intel for the real attack. She found Ruthie on the porch, rocking slowly, watching the same trucks pass. Her mother's face was lined with worry, but set with determination. "They're tightening the noose," Eden said quietly, leaning against the porch rail. Ruthie nodded, her eyes never leaving the road. "Trying to. But baby, they don't know who they're dealing with. Your grandfather faced worse than this. Your daddy, too. Now it's your turn to show them what Marshalls are made of." Another truck rolled past, deliberately slow. Eden watched it through narrowed eyes, noting details. Make, model. The way the suspension dipped, suggesting hidden weight. Her sniper's mind cataloged everything, preparing. The kitchen timer dinged, calling them in to dinner. The trucks kept circling in the gathering dusk, their headlights cutting through the shadows. But Eden and Ruthie walked inside with their heads high, leaving the porch light on as always. They would not be intimidated into darkness. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, turning the evening sky an ominous green-black. The air felt heavy, charged with electricity that made Eden's skin prickle. She double-checked the windows, making sure everything was battened down for the coming storm. Inside the kitchen, Ruthie worked with practiced efficiency, the counter covered with mason jars and fresh vegetables from their garden. The steady ping of sealed lids punctuated her humming, an old gospel tune their church choir used to sing. Steam rose from the canning pot, fogging the windows. "Storm's coming in fast," Eden said, helping her mother lift another batch of jars into the boiling water. But these butter beans won't wait." Ruthie's hands moved steadily, never missing a beat. "Your daddy always said storm weather was the best for canning." Something about the pressure in the air helping the seals take. Thunder rolled overhead, closer now. Rain began to pelt the tin roof, a familiar drumbeat that usually brought comfort. But tonight, something felt wrong. The wind was too sharp, too angry. Eden paced between windows, checking sight lines through the worsening weather. Lightning flashed, illuminating the yard in stark bursts. The barn stood dark against the sky, their newest calf sheltered inside with the hay and equipment. A flash of movement caught her eye, shadows moving where they shouldn't be. Eden grabbed her rifle, but another lightning strike showed only empty space. The rain was coming down in sheets now, reducing visibility to mere feet. Ruthie's humming continued, a calm counterpoint to the storm's fury. "Hand me that funnel, baby." These last few jars, the smell hit them first, sharp, chemical, wrong. Then orange light bloomed through the rain. Fire! Eden was moving before the word fully left her mouth. The barn was burning, flames already climbing the walls despite the downpour. She heard screaming, their calf trapped inside. She sprinted through the rain, Ruthie right behind her. The heat hit like a wall as they got closer. Eden kicked the barn door open, smoke billowing out. The fire was everywhere, spreading too fast for natural causes. She could smell gasoline. "The calf!" Ruthie pushed past her, heading for the frightened animal's stall. Eden grabbed for her but missed. "Mom, wait!" The roof creaked ominously. Eden plunged into the smoke after her mother. She found Ruthie struggling with the stall gate, the calf panicking behind it. Together, they got it open. Eden grabbed the calf's halter, pulling it toward the door. A support beam crashed down behind them, sending up a shower of sparks. The smoke was getting thicker. Eden heard Ruthie cough, then stumble. "Mom!" She caught Ruthie before she fell, half carrying her while still dragging the calf. The door seemed miles away. Headlights cut through the rain. Neighbors arriving, drawn by the fire's glow. Miguel's truck skidded to a stop in the mud. He and Pastor Lenora ran to help, taking Ruthie's other side as Eden got them clear of the barn. Ruthie's coughing was getting worse. She couldn't catch her breath, her lips taking on a bluish tinge that terrified Eden. Someone had called 911. She could hear sirens in the distance. The barn was fully engulfed now, the rain useless against the intensity of the flames. More neighbors arrived with buckets and hoses, forming a line to protect the house, but the barn was already lost. Eden held her mother, watching decades of history burn. The ambulance arrived first, paramedics quickly loading Ruthie inside. Eden wanted to go with her, but there was too much that needed handling here. Pastor Lenora squeezed her shoulder. "I'll ride with her. You take care of things here." The fire trucks came next, but too late to save anything. They contained the blaze, keeping it from spreading to the fields, but that was all. Eden answered their questions mechanically, describing how fast it had spread, the smell of accelerant. They nodded grimly, taking notes. Dawn broke gray and miserable. The rain had finally stopped, leaving everything slick and dripping. The barn was a skeletal ruin, still smoking in places. Eden sat in the ashes, her rifle across her lap, staring at the twisted remains of equipment, at hay bales reduced to char. Her phone buzzed. The insurance company, responding to her emergency claim. Denied. Pre-existing structural issues, they claimed. No coverage for suspected arson. Pastor Lenora had texted updates through the night. Ruthie was stable, being treated for smoke inhalation. They wanted to keep her for observation. The calf was at Miguel's place, scared but unhurt. Eden's hands tightened on her rifle. The barn had stood for 3 generations. Her grandfather had built it, her father had maintained it, and now she touched the ashes, letting them stain her fingers black. This wasn't just about property damage. They'd tried to kill her mother. More messages came in, neighbors offering help, storage space, supplies. The community's support should have been comforting, but Eden barely registered it. She was focused on the tire tracks leading away from the barn, already half washed away by the rain. 2 sets, deep in the mud. The raiders had waited for the storm's cover, knowing it would slow emergency response times. She stood slowly, muscles stiff from sitting in the wet ashes. The morning sun tried to break through the clouds, casting weak light over the destruction. Eden didn't move, her rifle ready across her lap, keeping watch as the farmyard came alive with the normal sounds of morning. But nothing about this morning was normal. Nothing would be normal again until she ended this, one way or another. The hospital room was too quiet, broken only by the steady beep of monitors and Ruthie's labored breathing. Eden sat beside the bed, her hands clasped around her mother's weathered fingers. The doctors said Ruthie was improving, but seeing her like this, small and fragile against white sheets, made Eden's chest ache. "Baby." Ruthie's voice was hoarse from coughing. "There's something in my closet you need to get. Top shelf? Blue shoebox?" Eden started to protest, not wanting to leave, but Ruthie squeezed her hand. "Go on now. Bring it back here." At home, the farmhouse felt empty without Ruthie's presence. The kitchen still smelled of burned sugar from the abandoned canning, jars sitting half-processed on the counter. Through the window, the barn's blackened skeleton stood as an ugly reminder. Eden found the shoebox exactly where Ruthie had said. Inside were dozens of letters, carefully preserved, many with army postmarks. She recognized the return addresses, members of her old unit. Back at the hospital, Ruthie was sitting up straighter. Some color returned to her cheeks. "Read them," she said, nodding at the box. "I saved every one while you were deployed." Eden pulled out the first letter, postmarked 8 years ago. The paper was creased from multiple readings, the ink slightly faded. "Ma'am," she read aloud, "your daughter saved our whole squad today. We were pinned down, taking heavy fire. Eden stayed calm, picked her shots. 6 hours in that position, never wavering. Because of her, we all made it home." Another letter. "Marshall's the best spotter I've ever worked with. Her patience, her focus. It's like she can see through walls." And another. "We call her Ghost because she appears exactly where she needs to be. Exactly when we need her most." Ruthie watched Eden's face as she read. "You were always special, baby. These people saw it too. That's why those raiders can't beat you. They don't know who they're dealing with." A knock at the door interrupted them. Pastor Lenora entered, followed by a stream of neighbors bearing covered dishes and get-well cards. The small room quickly filled with familiar faces and comforting smells. "Sister Ruthie," Pastor Lenora's voice carried the weight of Sunday morning. "They meant that fire to break us. But fire purifies. Fire proves what's genuine." She gripped Ruthie's hand. "They burned your barn because they fear what you represent. Generations of black farmers refusing to be moved." Miguel set down a toolbox. "We brought supplies to strengthen the fence line. More cameras, too. And I've got extra hay stored for your calf," Darla added. "That baby's eating like a champion at Miguel's place." Eden felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. The letters from her unit, her neighbors' unwavering support. It all crystallized into clear purpose. That evening, after ensuring Ruthie was comfortable for the night, Eden walked her property with new eyes. She saw it as she'd once viewed combat zones, analyzing sight lines, identifying choke points, planning fields of fire. The burned barn had opened up new angles she could use. She worked through the night, setting up motion-triggered lights disguised as security floods. Tripwires connected to silent alarms that would ping her phone. Each approach to the house now had coverage from at least 2 hidden positions. The old deer stands became sniper nests, camouflaged with fresh branches. She placed range markers, innocent-looking fence posts and garden decorations at key distances. Any vehicle coming down the drive would have to pass through multiple pre-sighted zones. Near dawn, Pastor Lenora arrived with coffee and biscuits. She watched Eden check the new security camera feeds on her laptop. "You're not just protecting your land anymore," the pastor said quietly. "You're standing for everyone they've pushed out. Everyone they plan to push out." Eden nodded, making final adjustments to a motion sensor. "I know. That's why it has to end here." Throughout the day, more neighbors came to help. They repaired fences, cleared debris from the barn fire, and helped Eden strengthen her defenses, while making them look like normal farm maintenance. Every delivery of food or tools came with offers of support, with quiet promises to stand witness when the raiders returned. As dusk approached, Eden climbed to her highest position, a reinforced platform hidden in the crown of an old oak tree. Through her scope, she could see the entire property. The drive, the fields, every approach. Distance markers glowed faintly in her night vision. The letters from her unit were folded in her pocket, their words echoing in her mind. Ghost. That's what she needed to be now. Patient, precise, present. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Eden settled into position, her breathing slow and steady. Her scope swept the perimeter in practiced patterns. Everything was ready. Come then, she whispered, her voice carrying the same calm certainty she'd had in combat. The darkness deepened, but Eden remained still, waiting. She was exactly where she needed to be. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Lou's diner, casting long shadows across the cracked vinyl booths. Zara Chen sat hunched over her third cup of coffee, checking her watch every few minutes. The breakfast crowd had thinned out, leaving only a few regulars nursing their cups at the counter. The bell above the door jingled. A man in an ill-fitting suit walked in, his eyes darting around before settling on Zara. She recognized him from his profile picture. Marcus, the IT contractor who'd reached out through her secure messaging system. "You must be the journalist," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. His hands shook slightly as he placed his laptop bag on the seat beside him. "Thanks for meeting me," Zara said, keeping her voice low. "Coffee?" He shook his head. "I can't stay long. What I'm about to show you, it could cost me my job. Maybe worse. I understand. My source protection protocols are solid. No one will trace this back to you." Marcus pulled out a thumb drive, holding it under the table. 3 years of emails between Sheriff Copley and Elliot Kincaid, internal memos, calendar invites, financial transfers, everything. "I was doing routine server maintenance when I found the hidden folder." Zara took the drive, slipping it into her pocket. "What made you decide to come forward?" "My grandparents lost their farm in '85. Same pattern, sudden tax reassessments, water rights disputes, harassment. When I saw these emails," he swallowed hard. "History's repeating itself. Someone needs to stop it." She nodded, sliding him a burner phone. "If you think of anything else, use this. One time only, then destroy it." After Marcus left, Zara drove straight to the county clerk's office. Darla Meeks was already waiting in her cramped back room, surrounded by stacks of property records. "Show me what you got," Darla said, clearing space on her desk. Zara plugged in the thumb drive. Hundreds of emails populated the screen. They started reading, their expressions growing darker with each message. "Look at this one," Zara pointed. "Kincaid to Copley. Once the Marshall property is cleared, we can begin Phase 2. The Foundation's investors are getting impatient." Darla pulled up property maps on her computer. Phase 2. Here. All these parcels marked in red. Every one of them black-owned farms. They spent hours cross-referencing emails with land records. A clear pattern emerged. Kincaid's foundation would identify target properties. Then Copley would find ways to pressure the owners. Bogus citations, suspended permits, arbitrary fines. When owners couldn't pay, the foundation would swoop in with lowball offers. "This is coordinated theft," Darla muttered, printing another document. "They've been planning this for years." Zara's phone buzzed. A message from her editor. The barn fire story was going viral. Comments poured in from across the country. many sharing similar experiences with land grabs disguised as development. "We need to get this to the feds," Zara said, "but it has to be airtight. One mistake, and they'll bury it." Darla pulled out a fresh accordion file. "I'll certify copies of everything. Property records, tax assessments, water rights documents. My stamp makes them legally admissible." They worked through lunch, organizing evidence chronologically. Zara wrote a detailed timeline, linking each email to corresponding official actions. Darla added notarized affidavits from other farmers who'd been targeted. By late afternoon, they had assembled a comprehensive dossier. Darla sealed each section with official county stamps, her hands steady despite the risk she was taking. 23 years I've worked here," she said quietly. "Watched good people lose everything because the system was rigged against them. Not this time." They drove to Eden's farm as the sun was setting. The yard was busy with neighbors helping repair fire damage, their headlights illuminating the blackened barn frame. Eden met them on the porch, her rifle never far from reach. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much since the fire. "Show me," she said, leading them inside. At the kitchen table, they laid out the evidence. Eden read each page carefully, her expression hardening as she saw the scope of the conspiracy. Emails discussing her mother by name, plans to make an example of their resistance. "Look at the dates," Zara pointed out. "They started targeting your water rights months before the first raid. The violence was Plan B. All legal on paper," Darla added. "That's how they've gotten away with it so long. But these emails prove criminal conspiracy." Eden spread the papers across the table, arranging them like she might plan a tactical operation. "How many copies?" "3, Zara said. "One for the FBI field office, one for my editor's safe, one for your records." "My contact at the Bureau is ready to move," Darla said. "But they need everything perfect. One procedural mistake, and Kincaid's lawyers will shred it." Eden picked up the main envelope, feeling its weight. All those lives, all that pain, reduced to papers and printouts. But paper could cut. Paper could burn hot enough to bring down empires. She pressed her family's seal into the red wax Darla had brought, marking the envelope officially closed. The wax gleamed in the kitchen light, like a drop of blood making a promise. "The truth will burn brighter than their fire," Eden said, handing the envelope back to Darla. Night fell over Eden Marshall's farm like a heavy blanket. Hundreds of small flames flickered in the darkness as neighbors gathered, holding candles that pushed back against the gloom. The harvest vigil, organized by Pastor Lenora, had drawn people from 3 counties. They stood shoulder to shoulder, phones held high to live stream every moment. Miguel adjusted the last camera mounted on the fence post, giving Eden a thumbs up. Live feeds running smooth. Whole world's watching now. From her hidden position in the reinforced deer stand, Eden checked her rifle one final time. The familiar weight settled against her shoulder as she peered through the scope, scanning the perimeter. Motion sensors and tripwires created an invisible web across her land. Nothing would move without her knowing. Inside the farmhouse, Ruthie knelt in prayer, her Bible open on the kitchen table. Candlelight caught the silver in her hair as she whispered familiar verses. The gathering crowd outside sang hymns that drifted through the windows, backing her words with harmony. "Keep my baby safe," she prayed. "Keep her hands steady, and her heart strong." Eden's voice crackled over Miguel's radio. Movement on the access road. Multiple vehicles. The singing stopped. Phone cameras swiveled toward the darkness beyond the property line. The rumble of heavy engines shattered the night's peace. Headlights pierced the gloom, a convoy of trucks leading 2 massive bulldozers. The machines crawled forward like metal monsters, their yellow paint dulled by dirt and rust. Behind them came more vehicles, packed with figures in dark clothes. "This is a peaceful vigil," Pastor Lenora's voice rang out, amplified by speakers. "We are gathered in prayer and witness." The bulldozers didn't slow. Their engines roared as they approached the fence line. Eden's scope settled on the lead machine's radiator, clearly visible in her night vision. She took a slow breath, held it. The first shot cracked through the air like thunder. The bulldozer's radiator erupted in a spray of steam and coolant. The machine lurched, coughing black smoke as its engine seized. Shouts erupted from the raiders. Flashlight beams swept wildly, trying to locate the shooter. Eden was already shifting her aim to the second bulldozer. Another shot, precise, controlled. The second machine's hydraulic lines split. Fluid sprayed across its tracks. The operator abandoned the cab, scrambling for cover. "My God!" someone whispered in the crowd. Phones captured everything, streaming Eden's masterful shots to thousands of viewers. The raiders regrouped, pulling out their own weapons. A drone buzzed overhead, its camera seeking Eden's position. She tracked it through her scope, leading its flight path slightly. The shot took the drone clean out of the sky. It spiraled down trailing smoke, crashing into the dirt. The crowd gasped. Comments flooded the live stream. "Did you see that? Military precision! She's protecting her land!" Sheriff Copley's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Eden Marshall, you are interfering with a legal property inspection." Eden's response was to shoot out his cruiser's spotlight, plunging him into darkness. The glass tinkled against the hood. More vehicles tried to push forward. Eden picked them off methodically. Radiators, engine blocks, tires. Each shot rang with purpose, demonstrating her control. No one was hit, but every bullet sent a clear message. You will not take this land. The raiders' confidence cracked. Some broke for their trucks, retreating into the night. Others huddled behind their vehicles, unwilling to advance against an unseen shooter. Sheriff Copley's face twisted with rage. "All units, move in. Now." Deputies hesitated, looking at the disabled vehicles and the growing online audience. Before they could decide, new lights appeared on the horizon, red and blue strobes, accompanied by sirens. "Federal agents!" a voice thundered through professional-grade speakers. "Everyone freeze!" Black SUVs roared onto the scene. Agents in tactical gear poured out, weapons raised. The crowd parted to let them through, phones recording every second. "Sheriff Ray Copley." An agent in a suit stepped forward, holding up a badge. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, corruption, and civil rights violations." Two agents grabbed Copley before he could reach his gun. They cuffed him as he sputtered threats and denials. The live stream caught his face as the cuffs clicked shut, defeat and fury warring in his eyes. Trent tried to run, but didn't make it 3 steps before agents tackled him. He went down screaming about his uncle's protection, his bravado finally shattered. The last arrest was the sweetest. Elliot Kincaid arrived in his luxury SUV, probably hoping to watch his plan succeed. Agents surrounded his vehicle, ordering him out with guns drawn. "This is ridiculous," he said as they cuffed him. "I'm a philanthropist. I help communities grow." "Tell it to the grand jury," the lead agent replied. "We have your emails." The crowd erupted in cheers as the 3 men were led to separate vehicles. Phones captured every moment. The corrupt sheriff ducking into a car, his nephew crying as he was driven away, the developer's smooth facade finally cracking. Eden watched it all through her scope, fingers still steady on the trigger. She wouldn't relax until the last agent cleared her property. Years of military training had taught her that victory wasn't complete until the field was secured. Pastor Lenora's voice rose above the chaos. "Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream." The crowd took up the chant. Candles lifted higher. phones streaming light into the darkness. On screens across the country, viewers watched justice arrive at last on Eden Marshall's farm. Weeks passed like seasons changing, steady, inevitable, full of growth. The new barn stood proud against the autumn sky, its fresh wood gleaming in the afternoon light. Community hands had raised it in just 3 days, the work punctuated by laughter and shared meals. The structure was stronger than before, reinforced with steel beams and lined with fireproof materials. Ruthie sat in her favorite rocking chair on the wraparound porch, a large bowl of peas in her lap. Her fingers moved with practiced grace, the shells splitting open with soft pops. A breeze carried children's laughter from the learning garden, where Miguel taught a group about companion planting. "See how the marigolds protect the tomatoes?" His voice drifted up. "Nature gives us partnerships. We just have to listen." Eden stepped out onto the porch, wiping sweat from her forehead. She'd spent the morning installing new irrigation lines with a group of neighboring farmers. The co-op seed exchange program was flourishing, bringing people together to share knowledge as much as seeds. "Mama, you seen the morning news?" Eden asked, settling into the chair beside Ruthie. Ruthie smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sure did. Federal grand jury's been busy. The indictments had come down like summer rain, steady and cleansing. Sheriff Copley faced 20 years for corruption and civil rights violations. His nephew Trent had turned state's evidence, spilling details about years of orchestrated harassment against black farmers. Kincaid's empire was crumbling as investigators uncovered layers of fraud. "They're talking about millions in restitution," Eden said, taking a handful of pea pods from her mother's bowl. "Not just for us, for every family they pushed off their land." "The Lord works in mysterious ways," Ruthie hummed, "sometimes through a sniper's scope." Eden chuckled, but her eyes remained serious. "We're teaching people to protect themselves legally now. Darla's running workshops on deed verification. Zara's showing folks how to document everything." Down in the learning garden, a little girl squealed with delight as she discovered a ripe tomato hidden beneath broad leaves. The sound carried across the property, mixing with the gentle clinking of wind chimes Miguel had hung from the new barn's eaves. Pastor Lenora's car pulled up the drive, kicking up dust. She stepped out carrying a stack of papers and a laptop. Since the night of the vigil, she'd been coordinating with lawyers, making sure every affected family got their due. "Eden," she called, waving the papers. "Just got word. They're extending the claims deadline. More folks coming forward every day." Eden nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. The story had spread far beyond their county, inspiring other communities to stand up against land theft schemes. Her farm had become a symbol of resistance, but more importantly, it was becoming a center of learning. 3 times a week, she taught tactical property defense, everything from security camera placement to creating clear sight lines. But she emphasized that the strongest defense was community. "Your neighbors are your best alarm system," she'd tell them. "Build those relationships. They're harder to break than any fence." A truck pulled up loaded with seedlings for the next day's exchange. Eden recognized the driver, a young farmer whose family had lost land 20 years ago. They were using the restitution money to restart, this time with the co-op's support. "Got those heritage tomatoes you wanted," he called out, jumping down from the cab. "My granddaddy's strain, saved through 3 generations." Ruthie beamed. "Bring them up here, son. Let me see what your people grew." Eden watched as the young man carefully carried a flat of seedlings up to the porch. His grandfather had worked this same soil before being forced out. Now his grandson was back, learning and teaching in equal measure. The afternoon light softened, painting everything in honey tones. Eden's phone buzzed with messages from other farmers sharing security footage, asking advice, coordinating deliveries. The network grew stronger every day. "Miss Eden!" a child's voice called from the garden. "Come see what we found." She stood, stretching muscles, tired from good work. As she walked down the porch steps, she passed the new plaque Miguel had mounted by the gate. Simple bronze letters caught the light. "We stayed." The story had spread across the country. The farmer sniper who protected her land, the community that stood with her, the corrupt system that finally faced justice. But Eden knew the real story was in these quiet moments. Children learning to grow food, elders sharing wisdom, neighbors helping neighbors. A group of students gathered around a raised bed, pointing excitedly at something. Eden knelt beside them, smiling as they showed her a sprouting seed they'd planted last week. "See?" one boy said proudly. "It's growing." "That's what we do here," Eden replied, touching the soil gently. "We grow, we strengthen, we stay." The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting long shadows across fields that had been in her family for generations. Eden stood at the edge of the learning garden, watching people move across her land with purpose and belonging. She thought about the night of the raid, the fear they'd tried to plant, the destruction they'd brought. But fear couldn't root in soil this rich with determination. Fire couldn't burn away generations of persistence. Looking over the thriving farm, the new barn, the full gardens, the people coming together to learn and share, Eden whispered words that were both victory and promise. They came with fire. We answered with roots. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.